done this before, but after a while, I think I've gotten rusty, so let's spin it back. For the second time, I'd be learning stick. Now since this is the second time I'd be playing around with Sticknodes, I don't need to relearn the basics. I'm jumping straight to animating your suggestions. You see, some days earlier, I asked a question on my community, and it was from the suggestion of these comments I was going to pick a couple to practice with. By now, you guys already know how it goes with these suggestions. I gotta spin the wheel to decide. The only difference this time is that I'll be spinning the wheel to take out the suggestion I won't be practicing with. The rest get to stay. Well, it seems like I won't be practicing hand-to-hand combat. Anyways, let's get on with the other 3 suggestions. I opened up my Sticknodes and got down to business immediately. You know, animating a bouncy ball is too basic, so I had to spice things up a little. I decided to make the animation using 30 frames per second. If you've watched the first part of this video, you should understand how terrible I am with Sticknodes. Anyways, after creating my new project and setting up my environment, the first thing to do was to create a simple ball for this practice animation. At this point, it should be obvious I don't know how to create custom figures, but I stubbornly tried anyways. And yes, I didn't want to watch any tutorial video on this. I wanted to mess around and find out.
A few moments later.
Eventually, I finished up with the ball figure creation and saved it. It was basically a plain-looking circle, but hey, at least it's something. Before I started animating the ball, I added in a background just to make the animation look more polished. I didn't know if Sticknodes had layers just like in Flip a Clip, so yeah, I just went with the flow. After adding in a kitchen background, I imported the green ball and got to animating. So, you guys know how the ball is supposed to be squishy to give the bouncy effect? Well, I didn't know how to do that when creating my figure, so it's just a round ball. Now before you guys come for me, remember, I didn't take any tutorial and I just messed around with the tools, so cut me some slack. For the first 5 minutes after importing the ball, I kept looking for a way to stretch it to give the squishy effect, so I could get on with animating. But as you probably guessed, I goofed around for a couple of minutes without knowing what I was doing. Finally, I gave up and accepted the fact that I can't do this stretch without watching a tutorial. But even after giving up, I didn't bother to learn how to do the stretch. I just decided to wing it and animate the ball without the stretch effect. The simple animation idea is to make the ball bounce from one point to another, then after some time bounce again and land back rolling. Following the set storyboard, I got to animating immediately. Since I was animating on 30 frames per second, I duplicated a lot of frames to slow down the motion of the ball at several points. After animating, I played back the animation and it felt so unnatural. I had to go back to adjust some frames, and since I couldn't do the squash and stretch effect because of the figure I created was literally just a round ball with a single node, I had to reduce the size to make it look like it's squishing down before bouncing off. After I made those tweaks, I went back to replay the animation to see if it looked any better. It was better than the first, but it was still unnatural and didn't have good flow. I still had to go back and make some tweaks to it. Before I went back to adjust the frames and timing, I made sure to turn on the tween effect. A lot of you guys suggested I turn it on in the previous video comments to make the animation a lot better. After several minutes of tweaking, copying, and deleting frames, I'm left with this as the result. The next suggestion I'd be practicing with is timing. Generally, when animating, timing defines an animation. Using more frames make the animation slower, less frames make it faster. For the timing practice, I'm going to practice with a base stick figure jumping. The idea of this animation is to make a stickman jump from one point to another, but because I'm practicing timing, I'm going to ease in and ease out the jump. The stickman builds up momentum, jumps up, and then lands gracefully. So the animation starts out slow, it gets fast, then slows down again. First, I got rid of the default stickman to set up my animation environment. I changed the frames per second from 10 to 24. I then imported a background. I didn't need to use the whole background, so I just scaled in the relevant section. That's the part I'd be animating the stickman on. I imported in a black stick figure. That's the character I'd be animating with. I just had to figure out a good pose first. I scaled him down and began the animation. First, I had to find a good pose to start the animation with. Eventually, I settled with this pose and began animating. The goal was to make him gather momentum by crouching slightly and leaning forward right before the jump. For this part, I animated most of his moves on 2s and 3s because it's not a fast-paced movement but a slow ease type of motion. After I had animated enough of the build-up, I animated him take off into the air. For the part where he's mostly going upwards, I animated on 1s and 2s, and then the part where he's dropping down, I eased it in again. Similar to what I had explained previously, when he's in the air, I animate him on 1s and 2s because I want the overall timing of the animation to begin slow, speed up, then slow down again, basically easing in and easing out. At the point where he lands, I wanted him to slowly ease into the landing just like I had earlier talked about. I also animated it on 2s and 3s to really slow down this part of the animation. Basically, the idea is for him to recoil from the landing slowly, then stand upright. According to my analytics, a whole lot of you guys watching the videos aren't subscribed. Well, I have a goal to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Help me get one step closer to the goal by smashing the subscribe button. It means a lot to me. Now back to the video. After I finished up the animation, I went back to adjust the timing by copying some frames and removing some. That's basically how to adjust timing. Like I said earlier, more frames means slower motion, less frames means faster motion. After adjusting the timing, I played back the animation and it felt off. It still wasn't giving me what I wanted, so I went back again to adjusting frames and tweaking the animation to get the perfect timing. After several observations, I figured the problem was with the landing. It wasn't as smooth as I intended, so I had to readjust and delete some frames. Eventually, I finished the animation and adjusted the timing, and now this is the result. Finally, we've come to the final practice suggestion, animating Sticknodes physics. In my opinion, this is good practice because it helps you understand how to animate properties of your character, like the weight and density. To practice this, I'd animate a character throwing himself. First, I'll set up my animation environment. I'll increase the frames per second to 24, then import in a background for the animation. I went with a city background and imported a car figure. The idea for this practice is simple. I want to animate a stick figure being tossed around by some unseen force. That way I'll be able to practice the physics of movement, weight, and density in Sticknodes. I imported a base stick figure and got to animating. First, I needed to find a good starting pose, so I scaled down the stick figure, then found the perfect start pose. After figuring out the first pose, I began animating. I wanted the stickman to fling himself backwards with speed. I animated without in-betweens at first just to map out the whole animation idea. I didn't want him to just fling himself aimlessly, so that's where the cop car comes in. I want him to slam himself back into the car. Animating this helps me get a good idea on weight and motion physics in Sticknodes. After animating the key frames, I went back to add in-betweens, especially at the frames where he's about to fling himself. I needed the motion to be a lot slower at these points. I figured out how to use onion skin in Sticknodes, so this made my whole process a lot easier. I tested out the animation, but some things still seemed off. The build-up didn't feel natural. The timing also felt off, so I went back to adjust frames and add more in-betweens. I also turned on the tweening to make the process easier. I played the animation again after making the first tweaks. It looked better than the first, but only the timing was fixed. The movement still needed work. The build-up didn't have a natural flow. I figured the problem was from the start. The part right where he gathers momentum needed more in-betweens and more duplicated frames to really sell the effect. After the tweaks, I finally pulled it off. The animation came out as I intended, but this was just the first part of the animation. For the next part of the animation, I want the stickman to be randomly flung by an unseen force. As usual, this is simply some sort of ragdoll animation practice just to help with learning the Sticknodes physics. I animated most of this part on ones because it's meant to be fast and I needed the timing to be good. At the part where his head slams the ground, I animated a little bounce to show the force with which he falls. After I finished with the keyframes, I went back to add in-betweens to smoothen the motion. After animating the in-betweens, at the point where the stickman hits the car, I slightly moved the car to show the force with which he slams into it. After this, I was pretty much done with the animation, and this was the result. Well guys, that's all for this video. If you enjoyed this and want a part 3, let's hit 1,000 likes. Anyways, see you in another video.